I came to Juniper Level Botanic Garden here outside Raleigh, North Carolina. Also the site of Plant Delight's nursery. The nursery is associated with the Botanic Garden. And there's all kinds of different broadleaf evergreens and conifers and just rare plants in general here. And I will say, if you haven't watched my other video about the Montgomery Botanical Center in Miami, I'll put a link to that in the description, because that one has some rare tropical conifers that they can't grow this far north in Raleigh, and really I could never grow in Tennessee either. Some of these things here in Raleigh actually could be grown in Tennessee. So I might mention it, or I might just mention the names and discuss it in another video. But this place is pretty cool. Let's check it out. This is a fairly impressive AB's concolor, white fur. Take a look at that foliage there. Looking really good. Native to the western United States. Seems to be doing just fine here in a partial shade location. Here is Magnolia yuanensis, otherwise known as the wood lotus, and a close-up of that foliage. Large multi-trunk tree. Here's a rare conifer. Looks a little bit like cryptomeria. Looks a lot like cryptomeria. But notice the bluish coloration on the needles. And as I step back, you'll see that the growth habit is very different from cryptomeria. Let's take a look at the whole tree here. No doubt this is an extremely impressive specimen. Taiwaniana cryptomerioides from Taiwan. Pretty rare tree. Rare in cultivation, rare in the wild, I believe. Here's a really large specimen of something. Not sure what it is yet. Let me try to get closer. Wow, this actually looks like a Cunninghamia almost. I think this might just be regular Cunninghamia lanceolata, but it's got much smaller and more delicate foliage than I've seen in the past. Maybe it's not Cunninghamia. Yeah, actually that leaf litter there looks very Cunninghamia lanceolata to me, so I think it is Cunninghamia. And you can see it's growing the suckers on the interior. It looks a little bit more like it. This is a very large Cunninghamia. Look at the trunk. Amazing foliage texture on this Cunninghamia lanceolata. There's no tag on this one, but I think this is Pinus bungiana, ghost pine. Not sure which cultivar, but the needles are extremely stiff, rigid, upright. My guess is bungiana. And this is Torreya grandis. Torreya, native to China. So if we get a little closer there. Very impressive Torreya. Here's a very impressive specimen. Magnolia virginiana. This is the variety that keeps its leaves a lot longer. Actually, it's completely evergreen. Now this one is cool. Broadleaf evergreen. There's 3 trunks right there. There's the foliage. And you can see this is pretty large. That is actually Elysium lanceolatum, which is going to be very closely related to Elysium anisatum. Here's a very large, low and spreading Taxus baccata. Not sure which cultivar. Macula stembergii here. Here's a big Schefflera delave. Cold hardy member of the Raleigh family. A Trocodendron Aurelioides here. Check out the foliage on this conifer. See if you can guess what it is. And I'll step back and show you the whole tree. Now look at the size of that. That is Camellia davidiana. Very impressive. One more look at that Camellia davidiana foliage. There's a very large Osmanthus fragrans. Show you the size of that. Here's a Japanese needle juniper, Juniperus rigida. Not too big. Sharp foliage. The Daphne-phylum macropodum. Nice, relatively small specimen. And here's a Podocarpus macrophyllus. Look at the size of this trunk here. There's one, another one there, another one over here. This is an absolutely massive tree. There's the canopy. But what is it? Here's the leaf. That is a Chinese holly. Ilex chinensis. Here's an Akuba japonica. Here's a pretty large Cephalotexus Harringtonia tree form. I believe that's Harringtonia. Could be sinensis. Here's a very impressive Ilex latifolia. Okay, check out the foliage on this conifer here. And it's pretty large. There it goes, way up there. Okay, here's a better view of the top of the tree. Goes pretty high. There's some cones up there. See if you can see the cone. A few cones up there. What do you think that is? Look at that foliage one more time. This is Nothotsuga sinensis, Chinese Douglas fir. Here's another Podocarpus macrophyllus, obviously an old specimen. Here's an extremely large Turnstroemia gymnanthera, although it looks like it's had some foliage loss at the top. There's no tag on this one, but I think it might be a Tsuga chinensis, based on looking at the configuration of the foliage. It looks like hemlock foliage, but it has the needles coming out at odd angles. And I see the same thing on my Chinese hemlock. There's a large specimen, whatever it is. Wow, look at this Thujopsis stolobrata. An extremely large specimen. This whole thing is the Thujopsis stolobrata, so it's a proper tree. What a very impressive specimen of Thujopsis. Myrica cerifera. Here it is, the one tree I was most excited to see here. Gonna be really hard to guess this one. Here's a look at the cones on this very rare conifer. Here's a view from further back. And looking into the tree. Nothotsuga longibracteata. Very impressive. And that's Prunus laurocerasus. You might be able to guess that there are a lot of camellias here. This is a particularly good looking one, Camellia japonica. Very impressive. Another Camellia japonica with, I didn't even know it had fruits like that, to be honest. Pretty large fruits on that Camellia japonica. I believe this Podocarpus is native to New Zealand. This is Podocarpus totara. Actually an impressively large specimen here. Clearly it has some pretty good cold hardiness. I'm often worried about my Picea rubens that is planted in pretty much deep shade, but this is some really deep shade. And here at the Juniper Level Botanic Garden they have their Picea rubens really tucked away in the shade, and it seems to be doing fine, so I feel a lot better about my red spruce now. Okay, here's another mystery conifer. Foliage is a little bit dirty here, actually. Hard to see. Let's see. Shaded, there you go. And take a look at that trunk. This tree is actually huge. Actually, the color of that trunk is a major clue. This is coast redwood, Sequoia sempervirens, growing very well here in Raleigh, North Carolina. There are a large number of very impressive Cryptomeria japonicas here. This is one of the best ones. Wow, that is a large Cryptomeria japonica. Here's another Cryptomeria japonica with a more open branching structure. Also very impressive. Okay, here's a really big Daphniphyllum macropodum. Close look at that foliage. Multi-trunking branching structure there. Here's a nice little Serbian spruce, Picea omorica. Here's another large Schefflera delvae here. Really large leaves. Doesn't look like it would be cold hardy, but it actually is. Phoebe chekiongensis. Interesting broadleaf evergreen. Now here's a familiar sight. Look at that foliage. And there's the whole tree, multi-trunk, kind of spreading, growing in a lot of shade. Taxus chinensis, Chinese yew here. One more look at that foliage. Tucked in here between two buildings, there's one building on this side, one on another, is a familiar conifer that I saw down in Miami and did not expect to see here. Any guesses to what that is? Podocarpaceae family. The name is Nagea nagi. I believe it's native to the Southeast Asia region. And that wraps it up for Plant Delights. And as a reminder, I will put a link to the Montgomery Botanical Center in Miami down in the description of this video, because I think a lot of you guys would like that one too, and a lot of people probably didn't see that video, but it's one of the most amazing collections of tropical conifers I've ever seen, and I'm sure you guys would be interested to see it.